Crozet Island confirmed. I've been waiting for that. So that's the number 3 on the most wanted list, and it showed up. It showed up last night. I'm pretty jazzed about that. Didn't get the other guys though. 3Y0J couldn't catch them, but anyway, that's the breaks. But thanks for taking the early list. I'm going to send it over to Lisa, KF6QNG, and the early list, W6DQ.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. And thank you, Mike, for taking the early check-ins this evening. Looking forward to the round table. Hope everyone's doing good, staying safe and warm. And yes, everywhere is getting snow. So had some, including here. So it's been pretty exciting. So anyway, with that, I'm going to send it over to Bob, W9JIB. I'm sorry, WA9JIB from KF6QNG.
Okay, Lisa. You corrected your mistake, so you're off the hook. KF6QNG, WA9JIB. Good evening to all. Bob here in La Cañada, where we were treated to about 2 inches of snow in my front yard on Saturday late afternoon. And it was just beautiful. Hadn't seen that in about 20-something years. Oh, it just reminded me of growing up in Chicago, to whatever extent I have grown up, that is. And because the street I live on, which is called Ocean View, because you can actually see the ocean from my house, even though it's 35 miles inland, from my street anyway, with binoculars, is the highest point in La Cañada, and about a half a mile below me there was no snow, so you had to be at elevation. So all the parents in town were driving up my street that evening and Sunday morning to take their kids to see the snow, and a whole bunch of snowmen and stuff like that, and I must admit, even I made a snowball and threw it. So that was really fun for a weekend. So anyway, that's the good news up here in La Cañada. Let's see if George got any snow. W6YEC, WA9JIB.
Okay, Bob, real good. WA9JIB, W6YEC. Well, only in the mountains. It did not make it down to Lemon Grove. But I think you got down to around 2,500 feet, something like that, maybe a little further down. So pretty amazing, and lots of water, lots of rain, that's for sure. Thanks, Mike, for picking us up and doing the earlies here tonight. Looking forward to a good nap. Haven't had even a chance to see what the question is, but we'll find out before it's over. So back to you there, Mike, and let you continue on. K6ZSR, W6YEC.
NY6L.
Okay, Jay, we have you on the list, NY6L. Very good evening to you, Jay. Okay, very good, George. Boy, big signals here. I'm running a Swan 500 at about 400 watts and into the inverted V. And of course, I've never really calibrated this S meter. It's giving. It's pretty giving. So the reports I'm giving out, well, it's all relative, isn't it? But Dennis and Lisa, you're 40 over, and Bob, JIB is 40 over, and George, you take the cake with a plus 45. All big signals here tonight. And boy, it's just going to be good conditions. I just hope they hold out, that's for sure. Okay, and fine on everybody's snowpack, looking good. And of course, here in Santa Barbara, our hills that we look at are all powdered with snow. Of course, it doesn't snow down here at this elevation, just a few hundred feet above sea level, but the mountains look beautiful. And someone sent me a picture today of our Lake Cachuma, which is our major water supply here. The mountains are just covered, looks like with deep snowpack there. So there you go. All right, so let's go to the, let me just take a break here. Let's see, just checking the time. We got 10 more minutes. And let me just stand by to see if we have any others that would like to be put on the early list. K6ZSR.
W6WUH, good evening.
Kilo 6, India, Romeo, Zulu.
Okay, we have W6 WUH, Larry, we have you, and KK6IRZ. Are there any others that would like to be put on the early list? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the next four. Let's start off with Bob, AK6R. Bob, send it over to Rocco and 6KN. Rocco, send it over to Glenn. And Glenn, send it over to N4DLA Portable 6. So, let's see. Go ahead and take it, Bob. AK6R in the group, K6ZSR.
Yeah, K6ZSR in the group, AK6R, very good. And a nice signal tonight, Mike, and actually everybody's got a great signal. This is Bob in Fallbrook, and it's a little chilly outside. The garage door is open, and it's the last day of the month, so guess what I'm doing? Shipping out everything I can. Anyway, that's the name of the game. Well, we did have a lot of rain here, too, and I think we pumped out almost 1,000 gallons from our garage driveway here, and if it didn't have a sump pump in there, we'd be foot high in water inside the garage, and that happened about a month ago, and we ended up putting all new carpet and stuff in. So we avoided it this time, had a good time. The weather was beautiful today, so we're thankful for that. Just a little cold. And I want to thank Lisa and Dennis for posting all those great snow pictures on Facebook. It was really cool to see the snow way up there. And Bob, snow in La Cañada. Wow, I can't believe it. We had snow in La Costa probably about 15 years ago. It was 4 inches deep, and it stayed for 3 days, and I was quite surprised. That's the last we've seen of any snow here, other than what's in the mountains. So, oh yeah, a little note, the Claremont Swap Meet is back on for those of you who were there. Good to see you. It's always the third Saturday of the month, and we have a new Grand Master taking it over, so if you want to come out there on the third Saturday of the month in Claremont, California, it's still going. Other than that, let's turn it over to Rocco and see what's going up there in the Palisades. N6KN to take it, AK6R.
Yeah, okay, Bob. Whoops. Okay.
Well, that might be a little bit closer there.
Good evening to everybody. And great signals tonight. Just really a delight to hear everybody. Yeah, snow. Well, we're in Palos Verdes, and for a brief time, we had some sleet coming down, and it turned the ground somewhat white, and our tiles showed some little, I won't call them drifts, but accumulations of the stuff. So I took photos really fast before it melted to send them to my kids to prove that we had some of it. Other than that, just a lot of wind. All right, I'm giving it to Glenn, WB6RLC. Go ahead from N6KN.
All right, N6KN, WB6RLC. Thank you, Rocco. Glenn here. Okay, I didn't want to take you as far away from us. Well, maybe he's getting us 20 over. But, boy, it sure looks pretty up on San Jacinto and San Gregorio and all of the surrounding mountains and hills. In fact, actually, somebody grabbed a photograph of an avalanche coming down San Jacinto. Just, right place at the right time. A spectacular photograph. But anyway, so running the Atlas 350 XL today, barefoot, and let's see, I might be hitting it hard. Let's see. Okay, anyway. So anyway, that's it's kind of a new radio, and I like it. I like the LED display and stuff.
things like that. So it's a good, seems like it's going to be a good little radio. Anyway, let's see, going over to, let's see, N4 GLA/6. WB6 RLC. Okay, thanks, Glenn. WB6 RLC from N4DLA with the early group. And, well, late last week, about 300 feet higher than me, there was a lot of snow, probably 2 or 3 inches. I didn't want to go up and take a look because the county doesn't have salt or sand trucks, and I don't want to find out the hard way that the road is icy. And 2 mornings ago, around 9:30 in the morning, we had a hail and grapple storm that slushed up the skylights on the roof of the house, but rain washed it off before I could get it fixed. But elevation here is 700 feet.
Yeah,
so
taking it.
It's just been very interesting, bringing back 3 land and 4 land winter memories. So, okay, back to K6 ZSR in Santa Barbara from N4DLA Orinda.
Okay, very good, Matthew. And very nice signal. You are plus 20 here in Santa Barbara. Glenn, your 350XL, you're 40 over. And Rocco takes the prize for tonight. He's 50 over, 5-0. Yeah, so, and Bob is 45 over. I really got to get this thing calibrated, but I'll tell you, they're potent signals, and it's just a real gas watching the big S meter on the Swan 500 deflect all that way, so it's kind of neat. So there you have it. So next, well, you know what? I'm going to stand by again. Is there anybody else who would like to be put on the Vintage Sideman Roundtable early list? Come now. Okay, hearing none. Let me check the time here. We have 3 minutes. So, Paul, you take it, K2LMQ, and the other K2, Ron, RP. Ron, send it over to KB7LOQ, and Art, send it over to K6RCL and back to me, and then we'll stand by for John, K6KOI, who's our host this evening. So then I'll pass the early list on to John at about 6:50. So go ahead and Paul, K2LMQ in the group, K6ZSR.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mike, and thank you for taking the earlies. K6ZSR and the Vintage Sideband Roundtable. This is Paul, K2LMQ in Kingman, Arizona. Good evening, all. Fantastic signals tonight. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Good to hear everybody. Snow-wise here, we, a couple days ago, or a couple nights ago, we had 3 or 4 inches. Nothing right now. However, for tomorrow and tomorrow night, they're forecasting 4 to 8 inches. So it should be interesting. We're up at 4,000 feet here. So it should be good. I'm looking forward to it. Tonight I'm running the Drake TR7 and into the SB 200, running about 500 watts PEP or so, and the inverted V at 75 feet. That's the story here. Good to hear everyone. What do you say, Ron? K2RP, K2LMQ.
You need to turn that click down there. You 20 over there, Brian. Ain't no sense in all that.
We'll do it again, Bobby.
Well, you there, Ron?
Bobby, what do you think you're doing over here?
K2RP, K6ZSR.
Sunday is dragging out a whole bunch of rings. Figuring out why they're not working.
There you go.
Look forward to tonight. Let me turn it up. 7LOQ, K2RP.
Yes, he is.
You turn it over to M4.
KB7LOQ, are you there, Art?
Yes, sir. K6ZSR, this is KB7LOQ in balmy St. George, Utah. Low 40s, expecting a bunch of rain tomorrow. Glad to see California got some snow. Hello to Bob, JIB, and also hello to Jeff, IRZ. Over there to DJ, K6RCO, KB7LOQ.
Yeah, KB7LOQ, K6RCL. DJ here in Goleta. Well, looks like a great net tonight. Thanks for taking the earlies there. And I guess John's got it tonight, so we're just standing by here. So K6NSR, go ahead and take it. K6RCL.
Okay, very good, DJ. Nice to hear you. Big booming signal there, that's for sure. Okay, let me take a standby and see if John, K6KOI, is on frequency. Are you there, John?
I am here, and you're coming in quite well, K6KOI.
Okay, very good. Boy, you're booming in here. With that real baritone voice there, you kind of remind me of Bernie HDY there. But anyway, John, if you're ready for the list, I can hand it off.
Operators are standing by.
Okay, very good. Okay, here we have W6DQ. W6DQ Dennis. KD6QNG. KD6QNG Lisa. WA9JIB. WA9JIB Bob. And W6YEC. W6YEC George. How we doing?
You are just at the right pace. You're doing it perfectly. Please continue.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And next is AK6R. AK6R Bob. Then N6KN Rocco. N6KN Rocco. WB6RLC. WB6RLC Glenn. N4 Delta Lima Alpha Stroke 6. N4 Delta Lima Alpha Stroke 6 Matthew. K2LMQ. K2LMQ Paul. K2RP. K2RP Ron. KB6LOQ. KB7LOQ Art. K6RCL DJ. K6RCL DJ. WA7BIP. WA7BIP. That's Gary. N6AF. N6 Alpha Foxtrot. That's Chuck. N6WHK. N6WHK. That's Phil. WI6R. WI6R. That's Dave. WJ6W. WJ6W. That's Dave. K6 Little Green Light. K6LGL Skip. NY6 Lima. NY6 Lima, that's Jay. W6WUH. W6WUH, that's Larry. And KK6IRZ. KK6IRZ, that's Jeff. And that's the end of my list, John. And you can put me anywhere that I can fit in there. Doesn't matter. Middle, front, bottom, anywhere. So over to you, K6KOI and the group from K6ZSR.
Thank you very much. And before I get right to it, I'm going to ask, is there anybody else that'd like to be added? K6KOI.
Whiskey Alpha 6, Juliet, Kilowatt, November. Good evening.
W6JKN. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think Mr. Allison.
I've got to write that down. Okay, well, thank you, Mike. Great job and wonderful pace, just the right pace. And I'm going to kind of keep my comments to a minimum because I'm working on fumes for my voice. I've been fighting a viral cold, and I'm on day number 4, and, well, let's just say the voice ain't, it's baritone. Let's just look at it positively. It's gone baritone. Anyway, good evening, everybody, and welcome. to the Vintage Single Sideband Roundtable. This is John, K6KOI in Del Mar, California. I'm the host this evening. Tonight, the station I'm using is an S-line. It's the 32S3 with a Hunter Bandit 2000 Baker amplifier, running about 700 watts or so, maybe 800. And the receiver is a 75S3C using a full-wave loop and using a Shure 444. We meet each Tuesday evening at or about 3895, and all this should be using equipment that was manufactured before 1981 or home-built equipment with equivalent technology. First-timers may, however, use modern equipment. In Owen's voice, I like this low voice. So I'm going to get right to it. First, I'm going to read the question of the evening, and then we'll get right to it. And, of course, the computer just went blank, so give me a second. I got to log in again. My password. Okay. Oh, now it's on the wrong screen. There we go. So, here's the question. What failures and successful repairs have you found out turned out to be, start over again. What failures and successful repairs have you found to have turned out to have been involve connectors or other mechanical electrical components such as switches? And the reason I ask this is it happened to me just very recently, this last wind that we had, the horrendous winds, and I ended up changing the coax, which was old coax, but I'm pretty sure it was the PL259 that just got too much stress and finally caused a problem with my step IR antenna. So that was one of the reasons it was fresh in my mind. And then when I raised it this morning on 40 meters, a lot of people chimed in. So why don't you chime in and start with W6 Delta Queen to go over to Lisa, KG6QNG, over to Bob, WA6JIB, and then back to me, Bob, and we'll pick up the next four. Take it away there, W6DQ Dennis.
All right, John, very good. K6KOI and the Vintage Single Sideband Roundtable, W6DQ here. Dennis up in Inyo Kern. We're running the KWM 380 tonight, SM280 mic, Alpha 87 amplifier out to the inverted V because the loop is no longer in the air. We had high winds again last week, and it took out 3 of the 4 supports this time, and only one of them is going to be able to be repaired, so the other 2 are toast. So I gotta do some work before that gets back up on the air. Yeah, it's a great question, and one, in as long as I've been in electronics since the 60s, that is a common problem. It's just, if we had all night, I could tell you about a whole bunch of stuff, but the most common ones I've run into, Alpha Delta, the Alpha Delta switches, Alpha Delta coax switches, I really love them. They're really good at attenuating the unused contacts, but I've had a couple of them fail. They're kind of bizarre the way they're constructed. I use the B&Ws as well, the rotary switches, and those things are really reliable. I really like those. I've got a bunch of those in the system here, but the Alpha Deltas, as much as I love them, they can be a pain in the neck when they don't work. So I've had to disassemble them and rework them. But one of the most common things I found were edge connectors on circuit cards. Even if they were plated, gold-plated, you'd still have problems with that in all kinds of different equipment over the years, and usually pulling them out and cleaning them up, using some alcohol or something on those edge connectors will correct the problem. But that's probably the most common thing I've run into. But they're just innumerable instances of connector problems here. So you can't be at this as long as we have and not run into those kinds of issues. John, thanks so much for taking the net. I'm holding it to 2 minutes. My alarm is about to go off any second here, and you'll hear it in the background. And there it goes. The 2-minute timer. So, John, thanks for taking the net, or the roundtable this evening. Mike, thanks for taking the early list. Signals are bodacious here. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, KF6QNG, and the Vintage Single Sideband Roundtable, W6DQ.
All All right. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, John, for hosting the roundtable this evening. Well, do not have an answer for the question tonight, but anyway, I can imagine there's all kinds of different answers to that one. So look forward to hearing what some of those are and maybe learning a few things. So anyway, I hope everyone's doing well, and as I said earlier, staying warm and trying to stay dry between the rain and the snow and everything else. So with that, I'm going to send it over to Bob, WA9JIB from KF6QNG.
I didn't know why you had KF6QNG in the group, WA9JIB. Bob over here in La Cañada. Signal strong. Lisa, you just got a great radio voice tonight. And everything is just set up just perfectly for you. So hopefully I'm doing as well. I'm on my Yaesu station tonight. Got home a little late from work and grocery shopping. I didn't have the opportunity to fire up the big Halley's Crafter station. And so kind of making and eating dinner. And the Yaesu is closer to the dinner, to the trough, so the feed trough. So here I am. So barefoot, dipole at 35 feet, inverted V, FT101E. etc. Okay, I fixed plenty of connectors over the years, but I really can't remember too much about them. They're not all that much of a PCAM radio experience for me, I guess. And a lot of connectors on guitar cables and things like that, which go bad, especially if they have a lot of strain on them. So, but the one that I thought I would mention, I think I might have mentioned before, since you did allow switches, John, in my HT37, which had been working fine, suddenly it wasn't, and so I put it on the workbench and turned it over, and the RF section of the band switch was covered by I guess it was just a piece of aluminum or something like that, a little shielding. Take it open and see there's a whole bunch of spider web material in there. And so after cleaning all that out and then cleaning the contacts, and I think I strategically kind of bent the contact a little bit here and there, deliberately to give it a little more contact. Used dental tools work great for that, by the way. After that, it worked like a dream. So I don't know what spider did that, but anyway, that was a memorable repair that had to do with, not socket connections, but connection between the switch wafer and, and switch position. So that's what I got for you tonight. And let's see, do I turn it back to you, John? Either to you, either to that controller to YEC. Sorry, don't remember. I blew it. WA9JIB here.
I think I blew it. They said bring it back to me, and it was only 3, but that's all right, George. We'll pick you up very, very soon. Fine on everybody's comments, and I was particularly taking note, Dennis, of what you said about the Alpha Delta switches. I use them. I have a bunch of them because I have all this equipment hooked up, and I use them because they're cavity switches. I think they've got very good isolation, better than the B&Ws, but I have had a few failures, and one that's about to fail, so I guess I'm not the only one, and that's one of the reasons I asked the question, to kind of get this knowledge out of what people have experienced. And so let's turn it over to the next. We'll make it 4 this time, and we'll start with Mike, K6ZSR, over to George, W6YEC, then over to somebody who I bet knows a lot about electrical mechanical, AK6R, and then let's turn it over to Rocco, N6K, and then back to me, okay? Take it away, Mike, K6KY.
Okay, very good, John. K6KOI in the group, K6ZSR, Mike here in Santa Barbara, and tonight we're running a Swan 500, and we're running about 350 watts, something like that, output to an inverted V up at about 70 feet. And in the palm trees, of course, and just a standard Shure 444 mic. So a simple setup, but I think it gets the job done. great conditions. Thanks, John. When I hear the idea, when you mentioned, I think you said either connectors or switches, and I kind of wince when I heard switch because I had an NCX 1000 on the bench for weeks, at least 3 weeks. It had multiple problems. And the day that I got it done, I decided to do a complete tune-up. I was getting output, everything was working, receive, everything was beautiful, John. And then all of a sudden, I went through the procedure. I made sure the power was off. And I unplugged the little SMA connector from the IF. And as I turned the radio so I could really get in there and start tweaking, that little cable with the SMA connector was kind of springy. And although I shut the power off, I should have unplugged it, and I didn't. Well, what did I do? I hit the switch with the AC. It sent the 115 all the way through the IF. I burnt out stuff all the way down the chain. I was just sick. Oh my gosh! In fact, I just turned it off. I took it off the bench with the help of my son, and I put it underneath the bench. I didn't even want to see that thing. But I eventually got it going again, but boy, it was a pain. And I'll never do that again. Always unplug everything. The switches don't mean nothing. That 115 is present, and, that's the deal there. Let's see. Whoops, my 2-minute timer just went off. I'll let you hear it, John. Eat your heart out, Dennis. W6YEC in the group, K6ZSR.
Yeah, that's fine.
George, are you there?
Hello, Cousin George.
Is anybody here, George?
Yep.
Are you there, George?
You call him the old lady, did
George?
Are you calling me?
Maybe we're calling George.
Hello, George is here, W6YEC. I'm sorry, I had a visitor. Were you calling me?
Yes, it's your turn on the round table.
Oh, boy, you guys are moving through fast. Okay. Yeah, you had somebody come in, so... Anyway, well, thank you
for taking it tonight, John. George here, W6YEC, running a Kenwood TS520 sugar, driving the 3001, and a resonant antenna about 40 feet, coaxial flat top. Yeah, I just saw the question, and I hadn't had a chance to even give too much thought to it. I guess if I caught it right, all the different kinds of repairs. I'd say a lot of the repairs fall into some of the categories that I glanced at there on the question. Control switches, mechanical stuff, tube sockets, pins that are not doing the job, all kinds of stuff like that. So I don't know if I adequately responded to the question because, like I said, I got interrupted and didn't have a chance to really look at it too carefully. So, John, do I give it back to you? I will do that because I'm not sure who I'm supposed to give it to. K6KOI. Sorry for my confusion. W6YEC.
George, I feel your pain. It's called multitasking, and I don't do it too well, so you are forgiven. Over to you, Bob, AK6R.
Yeah, K6KOI in the group, AK6R. Excuse me. I'll have to take another drink of beer here to make sure my voice is good. Hi. Well, great signals tonight from everybody, of course, and thanks, John, for taking the net. And you have a great bodacious, bassy signal tonight. Sounds great. And well, we're on the loop tonight, running about 1,500 watts and modulating very well. So
everybody sounds really good. Our loop did stay up, and still up, although we did have a lot of wind here. Okay, a couple items. If you're looking for a TS-820, I have one for sale that was donated to our club for $150. Includes the cap kit with it. It probably does need a little bit of TLC, but it's in good condition and it does work. So if you're interested, send me an email at ak6r@yahoo.com and we'll take care of that for you. Let's see, what else here? Okay, let's talk a little bit about switches and stuff. Well, as you may know, I run a lot of antennas here, and normally I have 8 to 10 antennas. And, of course, they all go through a electronic switch. But one of the things that's also on the switch is what they call a stack master. And a stack master typically was used with beam antennas. If you had 2 or 3 beam antennas on the same frequency, you could choose the high one, the low one, or the middle one. Well, I use those on 80 meters, for example. I can, at the flick of a switch here, use my loop, use my off-center fed, and my ZS6 BKW antenna all at 80 meters simultaneously. And that's really cool. I get a good signal reports, and also I can hear everybody in different polarizations and that type of thing. Anyway, when you're running high power and the weather is crummy, like rain and stuff, the switches themselves tend to have a problem. And so I ended up troubleshooting mine about a year ago. And I was using about 3 different antennas, log periodic and Force 12 and a couple other ones on the high band. And I couldn't figure out why there was a problem with certain antenna combinations. So I ended up taking those apart and finding out that, it really comes down to switch contacts and relay contacts being dirty. But one of the other things that I found was, since most of my coax runs are typically 300 to 500 feet, that I have to put connectors in between the coax pieces, normally 100, 200 feet long. And I traced down some of the problems to the actual connectors themselves, the double female connector and the 2 PL259. And when you're running high power and the moisture is in the air, what happens is the darn center conductors short out to the outside. And you get all kinds of funny problems, including a ladder line that burns up and those types of things. So I found a very elegant solution, which you can use too, to solve the problem if you're connecting antennas together and it's in rainy situations. And it's a very simple solution. It works very well. In fact, I've implemented it on all my different coax connectors. And that is, you go down to Home Depot and you get one of the extension cord protector units. They're about 6 inches long. I think they're either green or black. They cost about $7, and they have a clamshell. It's a long tube with a clamshell with little latches on the outside and foam in the inside. And so what you do is you take that unit and you put it around your connectors on the coax, and then you latch it shut, and nothing gets inside to affect those connectors whatsoever. So it's a real simple solution. It works great, and now I don't have any more problems with the switches are still an issue, but the coax connectors tend to be a bigger issue than the switches. So anyway, that's my contribution for tonight. I hope you all like it. And go down and get some of those connectors. They work great for extension cords, but they work super good for coax. Okay, let's turn it over to Pacific Palisades and, I'm sorry, Palos Verdes. I keep getting those mixed up. Over to you, Rocco, N6KN from AK6R.
Okay. Well, I hope I'm close to the right frequency. Good evening again to everybody. You know what? I'm going to try to zero myself here. Hold on. All right. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Sooner or later, I'll get there.
What is that about blind pigs? Finding a truffle there. 3895. On the subject of PL259s again, I run into a failure mode that surprised me, and it's kind of new, and it's been happening more over the last couple of years. And what happens is when you plug in some of these, we'll say non-USA, non-Amphenol type connectors, PL259s, sometimes when you screw on the shell, you get the shell tight, and you think that connector's on there, but it's not. And if you wiggle the body itself, sometimes it will break free if you caught the thing on the little V-shaped indentations that are supposed to mesh together. That's one failure way take you out. But the really insidious one is sometimes the shell bottoms out physically. It actually, the front end of that shell will contact the chassis itself that female connector is on, or the body of the female connector where the flange part is. It depends on how it's built. So you can take a pair of pliers and you can crank on that and it's 100% tight, and then you wiggle on the body itself, and guess what? It's still loose, because you've got to have enough room there to pull the body, meaning the outer part of the shell, against the female outer concentric part of the body. And sometimes you don't. Anyway, this is something I never saw 10, 15 years ago. And now I'm seeing it. And the word to the wise, you really got to wiggle those things after you think they're tight to see if you really got them tight. All right, let's see. It goes from me to back to K6KOI from N6CAN.
Oh, that's excellent. K6KOI, both you guys. Very, very good advice, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to raise the topic, because it's such a common issue to have electrical mechanical failures. And Rocco, I've had the same experience from they're supposedly even silver plated, blah blah blah, but they just don't fit right. And some of them, the tolerances are such that they just don't even screw on right. And so, I'm not sure where to get I can't pronounce it. The one you mentioned, the U.S. brand, but that's probably worth the investment. And Bob, great idea. I wrote it down. Home Depot, extension cord, clamshell protector. So very good. Bob, I feel your pain in terms of a spider. I feel the spider's pain. Oh well, he was in the RF section. He probably got toasted. So let's turn it over to Glenn, Mr. WB6RLC, and then over to Matthew, N4DLA Portal 6, over to Paul, K2LMQ, and then Ron, K2RP. Over to you, Glenn, K6KOI.
Very good, John. K6KOI and WB6RLC. Ready to quit for the day. Let's see, tonight, name's Glenn. I'm in Cathedral City, young expert over from Palm Springs, where it did not snow. Came down pretty low, but it didn't snow out here. Anyway, let's see, just kind of watching me.
What have you been doing,
I'm on the Atlas 350XL this evening, sure, 40-40-44 bike, up to an offset of that dipole of 32 feet. Running barefoot. So let's see. Well, everybody's pretty much covered a lot of the good stuff. Let's face it, anything electromechanical, connectors, relays, switches, edge connectors, anything like that is the first thing I go for when I think I've got an intermittent or a problem or something. Most 99.999% of solder joints are good and always are good. But yeah, things like edge connectors and PL259, relay contacts, anything like that is always the first suspect as far as I'm concerned. Just because it's mechanical, the corrosion gets in there. For edge connectors, I use an eraser. So give it a little scrub there and reinsert it. Of course, maybe a little deoxin or something on there. And for relay contacts, use a little deoxin on a little sliver of business card. You know, somebody you don't like, you don't care, you're never going to give them a call. So, you know, slice off a little quarter-inch chunk of their business card, slap some deoxin on there, and give the relay contacts a good going over. It's a nice way to kind of furnish them. Other than that, yeah, like I said, it's all kind of been covered. So anyway, Matthew, come in your direction. N4 DLA/6 WB6RLC in the group.
Yes, I like it.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. WB6RLC and the Vintage Single Sideband Roundtable from Matthew, N4 DLA. In Orinda, California, about 15 miles east of San Francisco. Like Glenn, running a Shure 444 microphone, and also an Atlas rig, but the 210X, about 100 watts into a 75-meter coaxial dipole up about, sloping down from 60 feet, and did get some slush yesterday morning. About 700 feet elevation, but higher up it was more dramatic, although the cloud cover covered up a lot of being able to see a lot of the snow. As far as connectors go, this goes back to the question from a few weeks back regarding crimp connectors versus soldering coax connectors, and that's what I had fail was a 1.2 gigahertz amateur television repeater receive antenna. I lost my receive. I look up, the antenna's still up there. My equipment's on. And then I noticed the coax connector had separated from the pigtail on the antenna to the cable up from the shack. And unbeknownst to me, it was a crimp connector. So I had to bring the antenna down and replace it with a soldered connector so that wouldn't happen again. But my father next door, KF6CVA, reminded me, you got to put a stress relief on that thing so it doesn't happen again. And Bob, AK6R, that's thanks for the tip on the outdoor extension cord cover. That might be a good hint and hack for a candidate for the hints and hacks in QST. So over to Paul, K2LMQ from N4DLA, Orinda.
I'll bring you cash tomorrow morning. I said, nah, I don't.
Paul, are you there? K6LMQ?
Yeah, I'm here. I didn't get them turning it over. Do I have it now?
You have got it.
Thank you, John. Good to hear you. K6 KOI in the gang, K2LMQ. Okay, yeah, the Becky's QRM is starting a little bit to come in here. Anyway, this has been a great learning experience tonight from you guys, and especially on that clamshell connector. Let's put it this way, the PL259s and everything, and I have our constant disagreements, especially the ones that aren't made in the U.S. Amphenol. And so I've had endless problems with them, mechanical mostly, and like you say, things don't fit right, or the pin's too big, or something like that. Anyway, so I have that to deal with. But recently, speaking of switches to go with the connectors, on the Ameritron amplifier and on my SB220, I've had those two rocker switches go out on them. I got to find replacements for them. I guess it's, after 20 years, 30 or 40 years of use, I should expect it. But it comes along, so I'm dealing with that right now. Okay, good copy all the way around. And let's see, I will turn it over to Ron. I'm sure he'll have some words of wisdom for us. K2RP, K2LMQ.
Okay, very good. K2LMQ is a group.
600 miles.
That's Ron, K2RP in Encinitas, where it was mostly a nice day. I don't know what happened later on. We're on the Drake TR4CW.
You're asking me.
I haven't had it on for a while, and this particular subject is very timely. This weekend is the Classic Exchange CW, and as many of you know, I have a lot of equipment. With the Classic Exchange, you get more points for using different equipment. So therefore, I pull a lot of things that haven't been used for a while. And my biggest problem is the band switches and receivers. They get oxidized or something.
If any of you chase DX, look for that. They're out there probably right now. I'll watch them on.
Receiver is dead or
down 40 earlier. 3 Bravo 7 in Mexico and Brandon Island.
Back and forth 10 or 15
They're about 9,600 miles from us.
How often they come to life? I had a couple of them today that I did exactly that. My Collins S line is notorious for that. If I don't use it for a couple of months,
Worked them in CW.
I don't get any draws. I just move those 2 band switches back and forth, and it's good for another couple of months. And I think that's probably more true on receivers because they're switching in the earlier stages where the signals are very, very weak. So I guess it doesn't take much for the signal to get blocked.
Pull them up on
But it's an easy fix. That's my 2 cents on the subject. Over there to Art, I think, KB6LOQ, KB7 rather, LOQ, K2RP.
Know that.
Yeah, very good, K2RP. This is KB7LOQ, Art in St. George, Utah. Good evening, everybody. On the HD37 again, into the SB220 and listening on SX115. Good signals tonight. A little bit of QRM there from the south, but we'll work our way through it. Thank you for taking the net tonight, John. Beso profundo there. I hope you get over it. Just rest that voice a little bit.
We'll catch you soon.
Connector, success, failure. Well, 2 things real quick. First, Collins S-line transmitter band switches. That's all I'll say. Another one, I was a kid on my dad's Hickok tube tester, and he showed me how to test tubes, and I was testing a bunch of old 6-volt glass tubes. And then I tested a 50L6. And I was finished with that testing, then I went and set everything back to test a 6-volt tube, and poof, it blew, and my dad laughed and he said, you got to turn the filament back too. A 50-volt filament's going to kill a 6-volt filament tube. So I miss my dad. He was an electronics genius and very helpful to me. Okie dokie, let's see what I'm supposed to do. K6RCL, DJ, KB7LO2.
Okay, real good. KB7LOQ, K6RCL, DJ Enchilada. Well, boy, the band's been pretty good. I did hear another station there close to frequency, but not really causing a problem here. Wow, the signals have been fantastic tonight. Anyway, we're on the off-center fed doublet here. dipole, I should say. Whatever. Seems to be working okay. It's just strung up the trees. The trees have been, a lot of branches falling out with all this wind and everything. Wow. But we managed to get it up there
10:30 and 4-inch
for a while anyway. Anyway, don't have a whole lot here. As far as connectors, I use crimp-on connectors almost entirely. And even the PL250s or PL259 crimp-on type in, or CNC crimp-on. And typically, most of my cable now is RGA deck, Amphenol, and I find that works just fine. If I'm blowing out cable, then I'm running too much power. So with that, back to you, John. K6KOI, K6RCL. Thank you for taking the net tonight for Mike and taking K6RCL, DJ and Galetta.
Very good, and thank you for your ideas there. I do the same thing, DJ. I'm using, I've gone, any new coax cables that I make are going to have crimp-on. I've got the correct crimping tool, and particularly when you're using RG8X, with its foam, I find it difficult not to melt the foam if I'm going to be soldering the braid, and so I just think the crimp-on's the way to go, and I've had good luck with it. And a couple of other comments, and I'll turn it over to the next group here. Glenn, I agree with you. You know, it's often that solder joints remain good, but every now and then you run into one that becomes crystallized, and that happened to me, let's see, 2 months or so ago. My little Swan 100MX, which I just love, stopped working, and I traced it to what I thought was an intermittent in the relay. And the relay is a real pain to replace because it was soldered in and such. So anyway, I replaced it, found the right relay, still had the problem. And what I thought was an intermittent relay was an intermittent resistor right next to the relay. And every time I jostled the relay, the thing started working, but that's because it was a bad solder joint on a resistor. So you never know. You just never know. Okay, so let's turn it over to the next group here. I think it goes over to Gary, WA9BIP. He'll turn it over to Chuck. Chuck, I think you've got a war story or two with your career. And so from N6AF over to W6WHK, Phil. And then turn it over to Dave, WI6R. Take it away, Gary, K6KOI.
Okay, K6KOI and Vinny Sideband Net. This is Gary, WA7BIP in Hawaii, California. And John, you're running 20 over, and so is Mike. He actually might have been closer to 30 there on the early. Anyway, we're running the Kenwood TS-A30S tonight, and 200 watts up to the vertical gap Titan DX antenna, and enjoying everybody tonight. Everybody's coming in great. So I get to the point here. Stuff that I've had, a particular failure that comes to mind was in college I was running my Drake TR4 out of my apartment, loading a log wire out in the middle of where I could run it to. And, you know, as they are high impedance, and I got a 300 watt transceiver, something happened along the way, and I arced my band switch over on the PA section of the switch. Well, that's not too cool, and when you do something like that, it's all ceramic, and you know what you got to do. So I went in there with a Dremel tool and managed to remove, this is without taking the switch out, getting it from the chassis, bottom of the chassis. I was able to go in there, or I guess this is up in the, well, I don't know where it's at, I can't remember now. Anyway, I went in there with the Dremel tool, ground away the ceramic, blackened, arced over section of the wafer, removed the contact, and put another contact in, which I got from a center lap switch, nicely plated, silver and everything, back into the place of the old one, and put it all together with a 256 screw, and that rig has flat run excellently ever since, no problem. So I got it fixed. And there goes my 2-minute timer. So over to, let's see, let me brain freeze here. Oh, Chuck, over to Chuck, N6AF, this is WA7BIP, take it away.
All right, very good. November 6 Alpha Fox. Good evening from a cold, rainy Emerald Hills, Redwood City. Let's see, I'm running my KWM2 backed off, actually through 60 via padding into the SB220. I'd just like to keep the power down on this band. So about 300 out to the off-center fed dipole. It was getting pinged by hail. This afternoon. And a couple of days ago, we heard there was snow, or we could see snow up on the Skyline Ridge there below the 2,000-foot level. That's just west of our hilltop. So I asked my wife, "You want to go play in the snow?" Absolutely. Some ulterior motive there. So we got up there to about maybe the 1,200, 1,300-foot level, and probably 3 or 4 inches of snow, and I proceeded to get walloped by a pretty good-sized snowball. So, known the gal since 1980, I could feel the build-up there in that pitch. But anyway, we had a lot of fun up there. Today there's 18 inches of snow in the upper parts of Mount Diablo, and there are people snowboarding and skiing on parts of Mount Diablo earlier this late afternoon. So tonight's question of the evening, very clear to me. This is a tribute to Neil Young's good old rock and roll album called Rust Never Sleeps. And in consideration of his album title, I've got several radios here that subscribe to that behavior, succumb to it. Dirty TR Relay and the KWM2 that I'm on right now. Dirty TR Relay in the Atlas 210X. And HQ-170s, one of them an absolute nightmare. Hatchet, golden hatchet recovery effort that had lots of dirty band switch contacts and rotary switches. So just in general, I think Neil Young was right. And I just want to voice an analogy between working on boat anchors and old vehicles, old cars, or my old pickup truck. They're simpler to troubleshoot due to the lack of complexity, these older entities. But more often than not, it's dirty contacts in my old vehicles and in the boat anchors. So it's the simple things. It's the little things that get you, like the buildup of rust and corrosion. So that's my tribute to Neil Young. So, over to Phil there. November 6, WHK, take it away, N6AF. Fun evening. Thanks for running it, John.
N6AF, November 6, Whiskey Hotel Kilo. Well, I'm running a Swan 350 Delta here to a coaxial antenna. Thank you, George, for the schematic and everything, and the help with it. I have a little bit of trouble with PL259s. It seems like they'll be perfect, and down the road a piece, all of a sudden they start acting up on you. And I don't know where it's corrosion or what gets into them. Anyway, you take them apart, clean them, and put them back, and they work. And I bought some MFJ coax switches, which was my first mistake, and I've ended up throwing the both of them I bought away because I had to rebuild the switches, and I figured I didn't want to do that again, so I ended up buying good ones. Anywho, that's my all about coaxes and antennas and switches. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to WI6R, I believe the question mark, N6WHK.
Yeah, okay, real fine. Thanks, Phil. N6WHK in the group from WI6R days in Kingman, Arizona. And, yeah, we had our share of snow here the last few weeks. We had quite a little bit Saturday. It finally was all melted. Let's see, it was Saturday night and all melted by yesterday afternoon. And we're at 3,500 feet, but I think to top it, when we lived in Arroyo Grande and we were like 3 miles from the beach, it snowed there in January. And so snow on the beach is a sight to behold. I had to take pictures of it because it was kind of hard to believe, and it was around for a couple of days, so that was pretty amazing. And that was, oh gosh, that must have been back in like 2003 or 4 or something like that. But here we do see snow at the higher elevations, not so often down here at 3,500 feet, but we have had it, and I guess we're going to get some more. As far as switches and such, I think everybody's covered just about everything I've seen. One that I did run across that turned out to be quite common was on my dad's TS440, his little Kenwood radio. The display got very intermittent and sometimes just wouldn't come on at all, and it turned out to be the ribbon cable connector to the display, and it's right at the very top of the cabinet, just under the cover, and I guess it gets exposed to maybe more dust and dirt and oxidation than normal. But all it took was just unplugging and plugging it back on a couple of times, and it's been good ever since. So those kinds of things do happen, and that's probably one of the more common ones for that particular radio, in fact. But we've enjoyed and not enjoyed some of the similar problems that you guys have seen. With PL259s, I mostly use US-made crimp-on connectors here now, but there are applications like VHF and UHF where I only use Amphenol silver-plated parts, and if you talk to anybody who's built repeater sites, you will never see nickel-plated connectors, RF connectors. You will have a site that you'll never get working right if you do, and that's been demonstrated numerous times by guys who build repeater sites. So for VHF and UHF, it's silver-plated parts only, and yes, the common thing is, of course, not having it completely seated, as Rocco pointed out, and you think it's tight and it's not, so that's a real common issue. I think it's time for me to turn it back to John, K6KOI. Thank you for hosting the roundtable tonight, and Mike for taking the early check-ins. We're running our Collins S line tonight with a Shure 444 mic to a vertical antenna. K6KOI, WI6R.
Well, you've got a very strong signal, Dave, K6KOI, and I had a TS440, and it didn't have that problem. It did have a display problem, but it turned out, and I guess it's a fairly common problem, that there was some gunk that had to be removed that I guess Kenwood had placed for control of moisture, and it caused problems and just had to be replaced. But I've had a similar issue with ribbon cables, and particularly I've had problems with connectors of Temtex. They seem to use cheap little connectors in their gear. Really a great net, and lots of good suggestions, and boy, do I agree with you in terms of spending the extra bucks and getting good connectors. It is worth it. Okay, let's turn it over to the other Dave, WJ6W, who'll turn it over to Skip, K6LGL, who'll turn it over to Jay, NY6L. And Jay, why don't you turn it back to me, and then I'll stop and see if there are any more people besides the last three after you. So WJ6W, K6KOI.
K6KOI in the Netting Sideband Roundtable Group, WJ6W.
Okay, John, very good to hear you tonight. You're sounding good even though it's not normal, but you sound great. Well, we're running a KWM2 tonight in 30L1 up into an inverted D as usual here. And, well, the questions turned out to be very interesting, even though you weren't so sure, John, huh? So, very good. Yeah, I would say that dirty switches and noisy controls, potentiometers, and that kind of thing are the most common thing I find on vintage gear. And edge connectors, like you say, and ribbon cable connectors. I had a TS440 and didn't have that problem, but that's kind of interesting. But let's see, a couple things I might be able to contribute is, well, as far as sealing joints, cables joined together, PL259s joined together with barrels. I have one on this line that I sealed with coax seal, and it's been in use, I got to say, decades now. I haven't had any trouble at all with it. It's great stuff, coax seal. I've always been going to replace this with a continuous run, but I've never had any trouble. So that's one thing I can suggest. And since I had a failure on my Collins 75S3B power switch one time, I never really fixed it. I just wired around it. But on all my S-line gear, now that's online, I put power switches, external power switches. I got one for the receiver, one for the KWM2, or if I have an S-line transmitter there, and the 30L1. It's just a standard light switch with an outlet built in. You know, it's a combination outlet light switch under, and I put it under the desk. And so I don't use the power switches at all, because I know from hearing other users that that's one of the most common things that goes wrong, not just with Collins, I'm sure with all radios. So that's one thing I've done. And I've got to do something with the 30L1 here. The TR relay tends to stick until the 30L1 gets warm. So in other words, when I transmit, when I go back to receive, there's a bit of a delay before the relay releases. So I guess probably I need to either clean the contacts or find if there's some kind of gunk holding the relay in. But anyway, once it gets hot, it works great. So it should be working now fine. But I need to get in there and look at that. So that's my contribution, and I'll send it over to Skip, K6LGL, WJ6W.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. First of all, let me make sure I'm back on frequency. Here we go. Back on 5-0, exactly. K6LGL, Skip in Santa Monica, 902 DM. I have observed over the years, especially troubleshooting old AM equipment that was factory produced. One of the biggest problems are the output SO239 connector has rivets. And the rivets worked initially very fine, the first maybe 10, 15 years. But then, you know, corrosion and normal things that happen, you get a poor ground contact on your output connector for your RF. So one of the things they do, drill them out, replace them with good stainless steel, and then star washers. Dig into the metal, be it steel, be it copper plated, aluminum, whatever it is. Good metal-to-metal contact and the connector, that. So that's one cure. Second problem is also on tube sockets that are also riveted. And they use the common ground tie points, and they wonder why the unit becomes unstable and gets uneutralized. Well, again, corrosion, poor ground connection. Drill out the rivets, replace them with good solid star washers to ground. You'll find out the problem goes away. So those are two things. The foreign manufacturers, especially stuff made in China, that supposedly follows the dimensions of this PL259 or SO238. They don't. Many of them are molded, they're not machined. The result is even they have poor tread matching. So I'm not surprised you find that Rocco. You have to be very careful when you buy those. And even the silver plating, those that are silver plated, you got to be careful. So good coaxial seals generally will take care of that. But you have to be properly torqued, ground-to-ground connection. Remember, the external shield has that. I tend to agree there's probably properly crimped connectors, especially with all these foam cables. Yeah, probably not a bad way of doing it. But still, good coaxial seal for moisture, especially here near the ocean. So those are things. And then the main power connectors, I had to replace a couple of them on the DX100 and also my Globe King 400. The main power connectors that were originally supplied by the manufacturer were underrated and the contacts couldn't handle the inrush. So replaced those and hadn't had any problems then. In other words, mine are rated 15 to 20 amps, so especially on the heavy duty, the Globe King. So those are things, and then there's the usual problem with the rotary band switches of that. You know that, there's no need to go over that. A lot of deoxidant clean and often cycling back and forth will reestablish the contact. Okay, over to you there, Jay, and sorry to make it so long. NY6L, K6LGL.
All right, very good. Well, good evening to everyone. And NY6L, Jay here in very cold Hesperia, where it is currently 38 degrees and supposed to get some rain starting in the next hour. And then it's going to snow again up here. We had a couple of days ago about several inches of snow. Took some videos and pictures to show that. And I tell you, I didn't really get snowed in, but I had to scrape the snow off the car and all that to back it out of the driveway. So, okay, PL259 connectors. Well, I had a very strange issue with barrel connector and two PL259s, one coming from the dipole and one coming from the shack going to the outside where I had it weatherproofed. One evening I keyed up the Super Senior at a little over 300 watts, and all of a sudden, I heard reception first. Everything was like normal, and keyed up the Super Senior, and it went to high VSWR, and I said, what happened? And I tried everything on low power, and my reception went like down considerably, many dBs down, and I had an open, very strange open. Make a long story short, went outside and taken off the weatherproofing, and my connection somehow got loose. I don't know what happened, but I took that all apart. Both the PL259 connectors, had taken them out, and made sure everything was making good, connections for the center pins. And I made sure that I resprayed everything with deoxit. Everything looked fine, but I did it anyway. And I made sure that little tabs that are on the shield part of the PL259 connector plugging into the barrel, make sure that I was making connection into the little V slot. And I snugged everything up with some pliers instead of finger tight. And my problem went away. So that was kind of a strange, quirky thing where it just, I basically lost a ground connection. Things just got really weird. And so there you go. All right, over to John, K6KOI, NY6LJ here in a very cold Hesperia in the high desert.
Boy, I cannot believe the signals. They are all so wonderfully strong. K6KOI, Jay. I've been there, done that. PL 259s, it's like, it's a Murphy's dream come true. There's so many points where they can fail, and so, Skip, your advice is good advice on rivets, and particularly I found with tube sockets, what you said is absolutely true. You can end up with an intermittent ground and causes all sorts of issues. And Dave, one thought, the switches on those S lines are almost, the on-off switch that's part of the potentiometer for the rig. They're almost impossible to find. Excuse me, that's not what I'm thinking. It's the function switch, whatever. But the one that says off, standby, operate, cal on the receiver, so it's not the potentiometer. Those things I understand are difficult to find, and they do go, and they go on the transmitter. And so what I have done is similar to what you've done, except I did it a little more elaborately. I got my hands on an isolation transformer that I can switch, and it also has taps where I can drop the voltage down to 115 volts, and I just leave the switches on all the time, and I switch the transformer, and that's been my solution here. So, before I go to the last three, I'd like to ask if anybody else would like to say a few words in terms of joining us. K6KOI.
K6LK.
K6LK. Bill, you're coming in strong. I got you on the list. Anybody else? Okay, over to W6WH. We'll turn it over to Jeff, KK6IRZ, and then WA6JKN, I believe it is. I can't read my own writing. And then over to Bill. So onward to W6WH.
Alrighty, John, onward and upward. Well, golly, yeah. I don't know anybody who's worked on radios for very long and had to work on an intermittent one that knows about giving the radio a clunk test. And you get an intermittent radio. Sometimes the first thing you do is give it a good whack with your fist, or drop it gently on the workbench and listen to what happens. Because sometimes that's the fastest way to find out you've got a mechanical fault like that, a mechanical electrical fault. It seems like there's kind of two categories of faults, and one of them are dirt and corrosion induced, and the other ones are human induced. And you find this thing and you just can't figure out why it won't work, and you take apart a plug, an octal plug where the wire is inserted into the pin and sweat soldered, or a Jones plug with a whole bunch of, there's a dozen wires on the back, and some of them are high voltage and high current. And when somebody does something sloppy, they stick a wire in a pin and solder it, and they solder up the end of the pin, but the sweat soldering hasn't occurred, and that wire is really just loose in there. Maybe it was tinned. If you did it right, it was tinned. But if you didn't do it right, it was just a bare wire stuck in there, and it sort of worked for a while, but all of a sudden it doesn't. And it can take a little bit of time to find that. You got to get out the continuity tester and start wiggling and yanking on things. So you pull on the doggone wire and it comes right out of the pin. Or they've done a sloppy job on the back of the Jones plug, and the high voltage is shorting out against the filaments, or the filaments are shorting out to ground, or some other darn thing. And so those are human-induced problems, and sometimes they take a long time to show up. I think Skip is right that the most ignored mechanical electrical connection are grounds in a radio. And when I get a radio that's old, with a steel chassis and screws with the ground lugs on it, I will literally go in there and disturb every one of those. I'll take my nut driver and loosen them up and turn them around and retighten them. because a lot of those grounds suffer from corrosion, and they need to be cleaned up. As far as, the other thing that's kind of a common thread here is sometimes some of the silver-plated stuff, be they relay contacts or coax connectors, or especially the better band switches that have silver plating, that stuff turns black after a while. And it also collects just dirt and grease. And deoxit is fine, and it's just very, very good for removing the corrosion from silver connectors. I wiped the real amphenol today with a paper towel and some deoxit, and the black oxide just came right off of it. It was great. But band switches, sometimes you've got to get in there, and that rubber pencil trick is a very, very good one. It's a little bit abrasive, just enough, and combination of I use sharpened typewriter erasers. It's like a wooden pencil, but the center core is a rubber eraser, and you put that in a good pencil sharpener so you can get a really fine point, and you can use that to clean the wipers on band switches, and a combination of that and deoxit, and you'll get a lot of grunge, just pure grunge off of those switches. And when you get done, they're nice and bright and shiny and silver again, and the deoxit protects them, and they'll work for another 20 years. Okay, pulling out my napkin with the red ink here so I can remember Jeff's call. KK6 IRZ W6WUH.
Jeff, are you there? I don't hear him. What a great idea on the eraser that's shaped like a pencil and then sharpening the point. This has been a very good evening with lots of good ideas. WA6JKN, are you there? K6KY.
Yes, sir, John. I'm still here. WA6JKN, running the Collins KW Sierra 1. I prefer to call it the Sugar 1. And receiving everybody who's pushing that S meter all the way up into the red region. Everybody. The Collins 75A4. It's working really well tonight. And let's see, my contribution is really limited because just about all the good stuff has already been offered up there. But I will tell you my standard practice is real quick. I always solder. I learned a long time ago that you can avoid the problems with crimps and wire nuts and things like that from RFI issues and RF issues. Always solder, and that's the way I was trained. And I'm not going to change away from that. It sounds like crimping is really improved over the years, and that might be the way to go sometime in the future. I don't know. I always use strain relief on coaxes that are dangling or need strain relief. I forget what they call those things. It's kind of like a Chinese finger pull thing. It's the more you pull it, the more it grabs both ends of the coax, keeps it together. And of course, all the environmental stuff that they have available for any connectors that are exposed to the outside elements. And I've never had an antenna wire failure ever, never in 50 plus years, never. I finally said, you know what? Maybe I'm getting close to a failure, so I went ahead and replaced every wire antenna, the 160 meter, the 40 meter, the 75 meter, and replaced all the wire. But I didn't have to replace any of the insulators, the egg insulators, or let's talk about insulators real quick. Do yourself a favor, go down to the farmer's market and buy what the farmers use for their electric fence and stuff like that. They got great big insulators there you can use to terminate things. I buy them. They work great. They're very, very strong. And look for power company insulators as well. I've picked up a whole bunch of those over the years. They are heavy. They're stout, and you can put quite a few 100 pounds of force on them. No problem. Okay, let's see what else. Amphenol is absolutely a must. Silver is absolutely a must. I don't do this too often because I'm pretty confident in my workmanship. I do use a solder pot when I do solder the connectors that I use. The techniques will develop over time with the solder pots. Makes the job so easy, so clean, so thorough, and very reliable. You just have to learn the technique. Okay. Let's see what else. Megger test, or most people would probably call it a high pot test. High pot test the cables. If you're ever, especially if you're running big power, high pot to test and the cables, and that checks everything, your connectors, your coax, and whatnot. So I recommend you do that. And if you don't have a high pot box, use your amplifier. If you have an old tube amp like a KW1 or something like that, fire it up, put a dummy load at the end, and modulate that sucker. And you get 2,800 watts down that coax line. And if there's any weak link along the way, the KW1 will find it for you. However, I recommend that you have the Johnson kilowatt matchbox, because what it does is it always presents a load to the KW1. So when you pop the connector or you pop the cable somewhere, the weakest link, the KW1, as an example, the amplifier, still sees a load. It may not be matched, but it will keep a flashover from occurring in the final. All right, that's my input for tonight. Thank you, John, and the rest of the group. Everybody's got a great signal tonight. And over to you, Bill. K6LK, WA6JKN.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. WA6JKN, K6LK, returning. Tonight we're on the Swan SW175, and looks like it's putting out about 100 watts. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about those tube sockets. John, K6KOI, has an SR2000, so he probably knows this routine, but I use B12 routinely. It's kind of caustic and it's kind of aggressive. It's used as a carburetor cleaner that you get at O'Reilly's or one of those AutoZone stores. No commercial for them. But anyway, wherever the price is right. And I spray that on the tubes, the tube pins, and then put them back into the socket. I have found over a period of time that really gets things going when there's corrosion around the pins of the tubes. I had a Drake TR3 one time, and the guy said, well, it's a project. So I picked it up, brought it home, and started shaking the tubes down, and it came alive. So there you go. As far as the tube sockets go, Larry, WH had a good idea about the tube sockets, torquing down those screws around it, because in the older radios, there was a lot of ground loops going on, and you want to minimize those. A guy told me that with, again, the SR2000 it's a rather complicated transceiver, has a lot of ground loops in it. And what he told me was you start pinging around the sockets. By that, you take something like a punch and a hammer. That sounds kind of dicey in itself, taking a hammer to something. But anyway, you ping around the sockets and make those grounds happen. Now, regarding the PL259, I go to a Weller P550 gun. I use high heat on the Weller, high heat setting, on the button as you push it, with a lot of flux. And I do something a little bit different I found through the years. I'm not that great at trusting the smaller type coax, the 58AU and 58U stuff. So I just throw away that screw-in barrel. I get rid of it. It has never worked for me, and I spend a lot of, and it's also time-consuming trying to get the shield tinned and properly spaced and all that craziness. So I just went ahead and threw that thing away, and got a lot of those. If you're in need, you can have them free for the shipping. Anyway, I put a little bit of solder, again with the Weller D550 on the outer part, on the larger barrel that comes out of that PL259 connector, and that's where the shield goes. I just pull back the shield and put it right there, and then the interconductor goes where it goes. So that works for me, and any of you guys out there want those little barrels that screw into the connector, have at it. You're welcome to mine. And of course, it makes it a little bit rougher, but at least it's a definite contact. Anyway, back there to you, John, and sorry about being late, but that's what the Swan Junkie is known for, his late arrival. K6KOI, K6LK.
But you made it, K6KOI. Very good ideas, everybody. I've jotted down some notes. I got some wisdom jotted down here that I'm going to use. Things that I jotted down include Rocco's comments about the problems of seating properly, especially some of the modern connectors coming from China, and that some of them don't seat, and they appear that they do, but they're fooling you, and that has happened to me. I jotted down Bob's idea of using the extension cord protector from Home Depot, where you're joining coax with the female. And it's a strain release. That was a great idea. And I've done that, but I think it's a good idea to repeat because obviously it's going to avoid problems in the future. And switching, especially this expensive old gear like the S-Line remotely, a great idea. Tube sockets and Skip's thoughts and Bill's thoughts and Larry's thoughts about ground loops from rivets that over time corrode. All true, all true. So those are some of the ideas. I want to thank everybody, and I'm going to give a joint co-award tonight of the Golden Cup, and each of you gets a half a cup, and that's Rocco and Bob, AK6R. Gentlemen, what do you think about that? Rocco, are you still with us here? N6K and K6KOI.
I'm thrilled to death with half a cup there, John. Thank you, N6K.
Well, half a cup, or no cup. And what do you think, Bob?
Well, an AK6R.
That was easy.
AK6R, what do you think about getting your half a cup?
Oh, well, I thought it was a great tribute, John, and I discovered that trick about a year ago, and absolutely works wonderful. It keeps everything dry and does not arc anymore. So go try it out. It's a cheap trick you can do at Home Depot, and just to look for the big long green clamshell deals. They're usually in the electrical section, by the way. Thanks a lot, John, and we'll catch everybody later. AK6R.
Okay, and one silver cup, it's got to go to Mike, K6ZSR, because of the sad story of the NCX1000. Mike, I actually felt that. That was a horrible story. Do you have anything to say? Well, he's probably doing other things. Thank you, everybody. This has been a very informative roundtable. K6KOI going to rest the vocal cords.